Complicated emotions. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews and to a brand new video here on the channel. Today I'm doing something a little bit different with my end of the month videos. Usually I do my wrap up and my TBR in separate videos, but partly due to just the constraints of my upload schedule and also the fact that I didn't read very many books in July, I've decided to combine the two because there's going to be a fair amount of overlap in kind of July, August TBR stuff, and I thought it made more sense to put them together. So welcome! I'm going to talk to you first about what I did read in July, and then I'm going to talk to you about August and how that's going to look. I read about 19 books a month. In July of 2021 I read 9. I think that's probably the worst reading month I've had since I started on BookTube, I want to say. I say worst in inverted commas because what is a bad reading month? I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm not getting paid per page. Nobody's... why am I qualifying it? I read 9 books, some of them were very good, some of them were less than wonderful, and I want to talk to you about them. So, I have piled them up behind me, but I'm realising now that I cannot reach them because this is an odd filming angle. First up, what feels like an age ago, I read Breaking Legacies by Zoe Reed. Fantasy about... oh, it feels like a very long time ago that I read this. I finished this on the 1st of the month. There's a hunter woman and a princess, and they end up going off together, and there's a romance, and they're trying to save the princess from something. I liked this well enough. I don't think this was bad. I think if you're looking for a like nice sapphic fantasy romance, this is one of those. I think it struggled from being kind of 2 books thrown into one, so the first one feels really rushed and the second one feels really tacked on. There is like quite a hefty split between part 1 and part 2, and it comes at just about the halfway point, so I think I would have preferred this if it had been 2 books with a bit more to it, but, you know, it was perfectly enjoyable. I don't know how much I'd be rushing out to buy a copy if I knew that was what it was. But no, I enjoyed. After that, I read TJ Klune's The House in the Cerulean Sea. I'm going to touch on this very quickly. I don't want to talk about this too much. I think it's a very lovely book in a lot of ways. It's very sad in others. It depends on which way you read it. I think some very valid criticisms have been brought up about the book. I will link a video below that includes some talk about that because I think it's worth mentioning. I personally enjoyed reading this a lot. I think reading it with that lens over it makes it less of the cozy sweet read that I think it would have been if I'd read it without thinking about that. That's all I'll say on that one. I think I want to actually talk about what I read later in the month. In fact, the book I finished at the end of the month, which was Under the Whispering Door, which is TJ Klune's next book. And this, you may be able to tell from the cover style, is very similar to House in the Cerulean Sea. It is a different world, it's a different setting, but it is a similar, let's have a very kind of light fantasy look at a thing, let's make it quite hopeful. In this case we have a main character, Wallace, who dies. He's a very nasty man, I don't think that's unfair to say, and he dies and he's taken by a reaper called May to a tea house where a ferryman, Hugo, lives, and he's like, right, eventually you're going to have to go through the door, which is like the end of life, stay here until you're ready. And it's sort of a look at death and grief and people changing. It reminded me a lot of The Good Place, but in a less kind of sitcom way. I really loved it. Thought it was really beautiful. It surprised me in a lot of ways. It made me cry at places I didn't think it was going to hit me. Yeah, I thought it was very good. And I think of the two, I think House in the Cerulean Sea is a little bit stronger, but I think it depends kind of what mood you're in. And I think House in the Cerulean Sea has more whimsy to it, which I'm a very whimsical person, so I enjoyed that. I would read more books of this kind. I think they're just tipping on the edge of being a little bit too saccharine, and it would again depend what kind of mood you're in to go into it. Having not read any TJ Klune before, I enjoyed both of these books. After that, I did a reread of The City of Brass and the Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. I really like this series. It's one of my favourites. I have a review video up for just the 3rd one, and I need to film a overbooked video for all 3 of them. I really like this series. I've talked about it 1,000 million times, so I don't want to go into too much detail here. But these were very good on a reread. I still maintain the audiobooks are one of the best ways to consume them if you're interested in them. I did plan on doing a reread of that last month, and I debated carrying it on to next month's TBR, but my August TBR is already quite full, and I think this is a series I'm going to want to reread in the future, so I may as well just save it until I can buy a copy and do like a full sit down and maybe do a reading vlog of going through them with a few spoilers or something. That would be fun. I then had a somewhat of a reread of The Dreamblood Duology by N.K. Jemisin. I say somewhat of a reread because I couldn't really remember anything that had happened. These are very enjoyable if you want like a kind of dark, certainly the second one is much darker, but this really interesting look at dream magic, but it's actually very political. Just good stuff. And the politics of a city and who's in power and where the hidden power is. Yes, it's all about power. It's very, very good. If you like N.K. Jemison's writing, you will really enjoy these. If you haven't read any N.K. Jemison before, I would probably read the 5th season first. But these are quite different from that, so if you didn't get on with the 5th season, you might get on with these. And I finished off the month with a couple of NetGalley reads because they are much easier to read when you're very tired because you can make the font extra large. I read Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I do want to film a video review for this. I don't know when it's going to happen. It is a noir set in Mexico, and it is more of a historical mystery, and I really enjoyed it. I think it felt... I'm trying to think how I would describe it. I think I read it not knowing what the focus and what the end was going to be, so I couldn't quite figure out the pacing, and it felt very like a lot happened before the story got going. And I think if I read it again, which I do intend to do, it would feel more even because I know where it's trying to get to. So if you're reading this and you're confused as to the pacing, I would say get to the end. It makes sense, broadly speaking. Yeah, I thought it was good. I don't think I loved it as much as I loved Mexican Gothic, but I think that's a genre thing rather than a comment on the actual book. So if you're a person who really likes noir and mystery more than you like horror, you'll probably like this more than Mexican Gothic. And then, why is this the last book that I'm talking about? I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, and I did not have a good time. Complicated emotions. I had a good time in that this book made me laugh, because a lot of it is very silly, and a lot of it fed into the predictions that I thought were going to happen, and a lot of the in-jokes we have about the Caraval series, which sounds like very catty and mean, but they're books. I'm not judging the author, I'm judging the books. So it fed into that, which was enjoyable. But the actual experience of reading this book was mostly just sort of, oh, it's more of this, rather than being, ooh, what development in your writing, what an interesting take on this subject matter. It was just like, oh, okay, cool, more of that, fine. So if you loved Caraval, and you would really like more of that, everything that was, then this will definitely suit you. If Caraval was not for you, this book is not for you. Don't even think, oh, maybe, like I did. It's not for you, it's just the same. I will do a video for that at some point, but I want to wait till that's closer to the release date, so I don't spoil all the people who will genuinely enjoy this book. Because if you like Caraval, I don't have a problem with you liking it, just really wasn't for me. Those were the 9 books that I read in July, and now I need to work out what I did with my phone. Because I'm going to find my TBR for this month. So I'm going to whiz through all the stuff that I didn't get to on my July TBR because most of that is still relevant. There's a couple of things I've taken off, like I'm not going to reread The Poppy War right now. I don't have it in me. I will. It's not right now. I've added a whole bunch of other stuff and rejigged things around. So let's start. I always start with Animorphs. I'm going to try and get to Animorphs 24 and maybe Animorphs 25. Not holding out hope that I'll do it because I'm not really in the mood right now, but there will need to be an Animorphs video this month. Do you remember when I was thinking about doing Animorphs August? Imagine if July Judith had tried. No, I'm very glad I didn't do that. This is mostly there as just a big reminder for me. I still need to read The 100 Years' War in Palestine. It's on my list. I haven't been in the place to read it, but I need to keep telling myself I'm going to read it, or I will just be like, oh well, never mind, and that's not the point. I want to read it, I want to know more. Honeycomb by Joanne Harris. I talked about this recently in my mid-year check-in tag. This is absolutely beautiful. I really want to pick it up. It's heftier, it's heavy and it's hefty, and I haven't picked it up yet, but I actually think it's going to be a really quick read because it's quite big font and there's a lot of illustrations, and it's a nice story-based book. So we're going to pick that up and see how we go. Oh, this is a fun one. I hugely optimistically at the end of June put The Count of Monte Cristo on my July TBR, being like, I'm moving house, but it's fine, I will handle a 1,000-page book. And hey, conveniently, as I was despairing, thinking I will never ever read this book ever, Stephanie and some other people whose names I've forgotten, are running a Count of Monte Cristo read-along over the next few months. So in August we are reading the first 40-something or so chapters, 450 pages. So I'm going to do a read-along with them, and it's going to be a good time, and I'm excited to read the book with some people who really love it, because I think that will make a big difference for me. Yes, so I will link Stephanie's video where she talks about that below. I'm excited. I think one of the best ways to read books that you're not necessarily sure about is with other people, because if it's really bad, you can enjoy talking about how bad it is with them, and if it's really good, or you're kind of on the fence and they think it's really good, sometimes you get their enjoyment out of it, you know? So I'm excited for that. More things I didn't get to. The Curse So Dark and Lonely series. I've left this on here. This is kind of like a stretch goal. If I get through everything else, I'll read these. These are not top of my list at the moment, mainly because I want to give them a fair shot, and I know I'm not in the right place to read YA at the moment. That said, there is some other way on this list. I'm going to pick these up later in the month, hopefully when I've got a bit more of my reading energy back. Beauty and the Beast retelling, if you've never heard of those. The Sword of Kaigen I actually did start last month. Let's see, how far did I get? And what is this? An invoice. I got to chapter 7. I got over 100 pages through, and then I put it down, boxed it up, and didn't look at it again. I don't know why. So this I am genuinely excited to get more into. I can't decide if I'm going to go back to the beginning or if I'm just going to keep going. I think it might work to keep going. I'm not sure. I see how much I can remember, but I was really enjoying the writing style of this, so I'm looking forward to getting back into it. I can't remember if this was on last month's TBR or not. I think it was. Radical Act of Free Magic by H.G. Perry. I haven't quite brought myself to pick this up again for the reasons I listed in last month's TBR. That's another one kind of like Curse So Dark and Lonely. If I'm feeling it, I'll pick it up. I'm sorry if you can hear the rain on the top of the conservatory. I will try and edit it out later. So now we're coming on to some of the books that are new to this TBR, which I've picked up in the last month, which I want to get to. These are more of my priority, I guess. I think that the other stuff is mostly owned TBR, and it's sort of, I'll get to it when I get to it. This is more review copies and stuff that's really fresh that I'm excited about. So I have Assassin's Orbit. This is Assassin's Orbit by Jonathan Apple. This is Golden Girls Meets the Expanse with the Side of Babylon 5 book that I mentioned in a vlog. I'm not sure about this one. Don't know what this is going to be like, kind of bottom of my pile in terms of priorities, but if I'm in the mood for a sci-fi, I will probably pick this up. Have you read that? Let me know if that's something that you're interested in reading. A book I bought myself, a hardback book that I purchased for me, Small Favours by Erin A. Craig. I'm really excited to get to this. Loved House of Salt and Sorrows. I want to read it. It is high up on my list. I know I love the atmosphere in House of Salt and Sorrows so much that I think this is going to be what I want. So I'm keeping that high up on the list. It's also such a summery cover, like just enjoying the last bits of summer. The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. I was feeling dubious about this one, but Asha has recently finished it and I know that she really enjoyed it. She's on the blog tour for that. I will link her review if and when it's up, if I remember. That's boosted my confidence in this. I think it's going to be a fun time. It's like a contests, pleasure gardens, slight magic. I'm interested. Okay, so now on to a few things that I've just got the sequel as a review copy on NetGalley, and I would like to read the previous books first, so I'm getting myself prepared. So a lot of these are out in September. I've just got the review copy for The Last Graduate, so I want to reread A Deadly Education first. I do have a review up for that. It's one of my most popular videos for some reason, and I would like to read that and then read The Last Graduate this month so I can make a review for the sequel. I'm excited to get to that. That's like the dark magic school stuff. One I wasn't necessarily following or expecting to want to pick up, and then I thought about it and I really did. I would love to reread The Midnight Lie, which I read kind of without that many expectations. I had a review copy of it. I read it thinking like, this will be fine, and I actually ended up really enjoying it. And I also got approved for the sequel, which, thank you whoever it was on Twitter who pointed out that was on NetGalley, or I would not have picked it up because the cover did not spark memories for me that I wanted to read the sequel. So I'm excited to get to those actually. I think that's going to be a good time. That is out early in September, I think, so I might prioritise that. And then I have made a start on my reread of The Bone Ships. I am 100 or so pages through that. Yes, exactly 100 pages through. That's always satisfying. And I want to read the sequel because I have a review copy of The Bone Ship's Wake. This is one of my favourite series of all time. I love pirates, I love dragons. This brings all of it together in a beautiful, beautiful mesh. I'm a bit nervous for what's going to happen because the second book did rip out my heart and stamp on it a lot, but I have faith that I will have a good time anyway. Like it'll stamp on my heart and I'll be like, thank you for stamping on my heart. That's that. So I have no idea how many books that is, and I'm not going to count them, and I don't want to because I don't want to know. It is more than I will probably be capable of reading, and I know this. I am fully aware of this fact. Other than maybe taking off a couple of rereads that I wasn't in the mood to do, like Empire of Gold, Poppy War, I still wanted to read all of the things, and I think if I start taking them off my TBR when they were on, it doesn't suit my personality to do that. So I'm really excited for all of it, to be honest. I am less excited for some than others. Small Favours I really want to pick up. Last Graduate I really want to read. There's some good stuff coming out. It's that September-y, lots of fantasy releases are coming out time. So we'll see how we go. I'm also not wanting to do what I typically do, which is have a month where I read nothing, and then a month where I force myself to read lots so I completely burn myself out, and then a month where I read nothing, and I'd like to make it a bit more even. So I'm going to shoot to try and read 15 books of this pile, and we'll see how we go. So hello, future Judith, watching this back to remind yourself what was on your TBR. How did it go? What was your favourite book of July? I would love to know. And what is the book you are most looking forward to reading over the next few months? It doesn't have to be a new release. Just let me know what it is. I'm excited for you and I wish to channel that excitement through the comment section. Here we go. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I put out new videos 3 days a week. It's very exciting. You can also follow me on all of my social media. You can come hang out on Discord. We have a lovely time with a nice group of people. That's all linked below. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Yeah. Don't follow me, don't follow me, don't follow me. Come on to that in the TBR. It was planned. Actually, no, let's come on to it now. If you like NK, we'll see. That's another one. Ooh.